we'll crack through it and look, ask as many questions as you want as we go along, okay? We'll keep this interactive, so I'll hand it over to you, Alan. Thanks.
Yep. So, as Alan said, I'm going to go really through how dairy farmers select the beef bull, and I suppose why you should be selecting that higher beef merit bull. I suppose give a background on why I suppose the focus has really changed, that there's no real more importance on that beef bull being used in the dairy herd. And firstly here, this is just a graph here from ICBF, and it just shows the expansion of the dairy herd. And your orange chart here is just showing your number of dairy sired progeny coming from dairy cows. And that's actually been stable over the expansion period. So even since quotas were abolished, the number of dairy calves coming from the dairy herd has stayed relatively stagnant over that period. But where the increase is in those blue bars, is where the beef bull, there's been an increased number of calves coming from a beef sired animal coming from that dairy herd. And then obviously is that the other big challenge then is the export. So we've over 200,000 calves from the dairy herd are being exported each year. And it's a major market for calves, but obviously that's coming under constant scrutiny, socially and politically, due to the welfare of these calves. Just for a prime example there, most of you would have seen that RT Investigates programme, and that things like that really heighten it, and it's continually something that we have to be aware of, and maybe for the future we potentially have to be considering that there will be no exports, or calves will have to be at a very old age when they can be exported. And then I suppose our main market is, within our home market, is the beef rearers in Ireland. But predominantly, beef farmers are actually not that willing to take calves coming from the dairy herd. And I suppose a study from ICBF looked at this, and why they firstly is looking at that farmers that do they buy them continually? So here only 42% of beef farmers that bought a calf bought them the following year. So what that means is 58% of beef farmers that bought calves to rear did not buy calves the subsequent year. So we don't know why they fell out. Potentially they lost money, they were unhappy, they had high mortality rate. So that's a big challenge on dairy farmers to ensure that they get a quality calf, and obviously that the beef farmer can rear these calves. But again, it's only the dairy farmer can protect their industry and making sure they can provide a good calf. Looking at reasons why potentially beef farmers won't take calves, there's a study here by the department. They found the poor profit margin was associated with calves coming from the dairy herd, that they were poor quality, and then they were concerned about the volatility and the market uncertainty. But as dairy industry, what we can do is make sure we produce healthy calves, and Martin's going to go through that in the next presentation, and making sure that the calves that we sell are healthy, going to the beef farmer. And then what I'm going to speak about is how we actually improve the beef merit of these calves, so the beef farmer actually has a calf that can grow at a good rate, will produce a good carcass, and that can make a good revenue. And these are the calves that beef farmers will look for. So we'll solve a lot of the issues that beef rearers have with calves coming from the dairy herd if you provide a healthy calf with good beef merit. It'll improve their profitability, it'll improve the calf quality, and obviously volatility and market uncertainty, that's something outside the farm gate that we can't control, but we must try to control everything we can. So picking a beef bull is, I suppose there's really two parts, and I suppose predominantly was always focused on your dairy producer has the driver here on picking that beef bull, and what he wants as dairy producers is easy calving, short gestation. But for them calves, and to get continually customers coming back, that calf has to perform. So the calf has to have good beef genetics to be able to produce a good carcass performance. So there's really two key parts to picking a beef bull. And the Dairy Beef Index was launched, so very similar to your EBI that we use in dairy breeding. This was a tool to select beef bulls. So what it was doing is marrying the desires of both your dairy producer and your beef producer into one index. So as I said, this was launched in 2019, but then got an update there at the start of this year where it included age of slaughter. Although that's very good for environmentally, it's also a very important economic trait for beef farmers. Animals that are slaughtered at a younger age are much more profitable to the beef finisher. And then also there's been a carbon subindex added, which many of you are aware that was also added to your EBI. So what the dairy beef index is a single monetary value. So what it is summing all the important traits into one single figure. So if you're going to pick a beef bull, it can be challenging. How much weight do I put on calving? How much weight do I put on beef? This is actually put the economics on it, sums it up into one figure, and total make it easy to pick that bull. So it's just one single figure of that dairy beef index. This is a tool for dairy farmers to select beef bulls. It's not for your commercial beef farmers. They have suckler indexes. This is just for dairy farmers to select beef bulls, and also for pedigree breeders that are breeding bulls for the dairy herd. And in essence, what it's trying to do is produce easier calving animals with shorter gestation and less mortality. That's what the dairy farmer wants in a beef bull. But it's also then for the beef farmer, it's trying to produce animals, it's trying to produce sires that will produce progeny with heavier carcasses, higher conformation, they'll be younger at slaughter, more of them will reach in spec, and they'll also have a reduced daily feed intake. So I suppose it's very easy for me to say that we can marry the desires, and picking easy calving and good beef can be often a challenge. So on your bottom axis here is your calving subindex, and the left here is your beef subindex, and this is the plot of your bulls. So in general, if you just select for calving ease, which was the main driver in selecting beef bulls up to recently, you're going to reduce that beef quality of the calf if you just selected for calving ease. But just taking the same group of bulls and just plotting the DBI. So I just put it into 5 different categories of your dairy beef index. So these orange ones here, you're inferior for your dairy beef index. These are the ones that you will never use. They're poor for calving, they're hard calving, and they're also poor. They're relatively poor for beef. But on the top right, these are the ones that you want, and these are the ones that the dairy beef index are identifying. They're good for calving and they're good for beef traits. Now you may say there's a bit of a spread in that green spread there, that there's some getting it all from calving, or there's some getting it all from beef. And that's something I'm going to talk about, is that balancing. But us as a breeding company, our challenge is to make sure that we get that more bulls in that top right-hand corner, and to break the curve. They're called curve benders. They're the one that breaks what you usually associate with is easy calving is poor beef, or hard calving is good beef. What we want is an easy calving with good beef, and that's our challenge to breed these bulls. So in general, there's a rhetoric out there that your dairy beef index is all driven towards calving, and actually the beef farmer is actually very negative towards this dairy beef index. But here we just see bulls, these are Angus sires, and if you just plot them based on your dairy beef index, in general, if you select solely your dairy beef index, the progeny of those bulls will have a higher carcass weight. But there's a few bulls that continually are coming to the top, and where there's a lot of negativity is they have poor carcass weights, although they're very high in the dairy beef index. We saw this very similarly in the EBI. There was bulls coming high in the EBI, but they were getting it all from fertility and still had a poor milk production. Just like that, we had to balance your fertility and your milk. And in this case, when you're selecting your beef bull, you must make sure that it's balanced both for calving traits and your beef traits. Prime example here, and I just picked out 2 bulls. On your left, a firm favourite by many dairy farmers was KYA, extremely easy calving. And on the right is Gabriel Pat, who's also easy calving. These both come up with the same DBI. So if you look at the bulls and you want to pick a bull, these actually look on the dairy beef index exactly the same profit. But when you break down into their index, firstly just looking at your calving traits, your KYA is getting more from calving. He's easier calved, he's shorter gestation, only by 2 days. But the important note here is they're actually both extremely easy calving. We would recommend Gabriel Pat for heifers. So they're both, and obviously KYA is suitable heifers, but most importantly, they're both suitable heifers, and there's very little benefit in getting that extra easy calving that KYA has. There's kind of that benefit. There's a point when you hit that calving ease that there's no extra benefit. But unfortunately, that's the limitations of your index. they're still getting the benefit in the DBI. When you look at the beef traits, this is where the big difference comes between these two bulls, is that Gabriel Pat will produce progeny that are going to be €30 more profitable to the beef farmer at finish. So if you use Gabriel, the bull on the right versus the bull on the left, on the same cow, the bull on the right will produce progeny with €30 more profit for the beef finisher. That's coming from a heavier carcass, more conformation, and a slaughter at a younger age. So it's important just to make sure, although they're the same dairy beef index, that you must look at within that the Gabriel Pat, still easy calving, but good, with very good beef merit. So I kind of break how we pick the bulls, but now it's using more beef within that dairy herd. So just taking your herd of cows. Obviously there's cows in that herd that you do not want to breed a replacement heifer off. They're cows that are low EBI, they're poor milk producers, or they're your problem cows such as they have lameness or they have high somatic cell count. Irrespective when these cows come in the breeding season, you should be using a beef bull. Because it was often the rule of thumb was we use dairy AI for 5 to 6 weeks and then came in with beef AI or a beef stock bull. But that needs to change to try to improve that beef quality throughout your year. Is now these cows should be only getting a beef sire. So today you can do that. You can look at your herd of cows and identify cows that you don't want the heifer off. They should be straight away targeted for a beef bull. Out of the remaining cows, some will come early in the breeding season. These are the ones that you're using your high EBI dairy semen on. You're using, and then you're also, what you're trying to do here is, if they're good fertility, young cows, there's also the possibility of using sex semen on these cows. But the target here is not to keep using dairy semen, is there's a time point that you're going to have enough dairy replacements. So for your system, breed only enough dairy replacements for yourself. Obviously, if you're selling dairy replacements, you continue to breed more as if you have a market for them. But it's important, majority, just breed enough dairy replacements for yourself. And at that time point, when you have enough dairy bred, you should be using a beef bull on the rest of the cows again. It's important here as well, there's a tendency to use that beef stock bull, and obviously there's always going to be, the stock bull is going to be the clean up. But the AI, using beef AI, gives you that bit more use that you can pick the bull to match the cow. A stock bull, you're going to have to use the stock bull to your smallest cow. But if you continue using AI, you can use a bit better of a beef bull on your bigger cows. Also important to note here in the breeding season, earlier in the breeding season, when you're using a beef bull, gestation is not important. If you're looking to calve in the 1st of February, if you use a really short gestation beef bull, they're going to calve in January. So here, there should not be a focus on gestation length. So you can use bulls maybe at 0 to +2 on the gestation PTA. They're also easier calved early in the season, so maybe you can push the calving thresholds a small bit more in those earlier calves. Later in the season, cows are getting a bit fatter in that. Later in the calving season, there's less management of the cows, so you'll need to be very careful on the calving ease. You should be using more focus now on the calving bull you use later in the season, and also to tighten your calving spread, you want to use a bull very good for gestation length to be able to tighten your calving season the following year. To go through some, I suppose, then is matching your bull to your different cow groups within your herd. So your main group is your heifer, or your first group here is your heifers. You here, really in this group, you want to be using really easy calving. You want to be using within that dairy heifer calving difficulty, you want to be using less than 7% calving difficulty with more than 80% reliability. Lot of records used. So you need to have confidence in the bull you're using on the maiden heifers. Important to know in your dairy heifers, the recommendation would be to use dairy AI on these. These are your most genetically elite females within your herd, so you should be trying to breed dairy replacements off this group. But if not possible, you should try to be using a very easy calving bull on these, and realistically, that'll only be within your Angus breed. And that, an example here is Mateo. Your second group is your second calvers. They're your young cows, they're very young cows in the herd. You still want to be cautious here in your calving. So just important to note, there's different calving difficulties when you're using heifers and cows. So you're just using your heifer calving difficulty for heifers, and here you're just using your cow calving difficulty. You're looking at a threshold of around less than 3% or maybe 3.5% on those young cows, those second calvers, and trying to push that beef sub-index to within that threshold. Two very good examples here is Twomey, the Angus, and if you wanted to look for a different breed, a sailor option there would be Notstown Rye. Both very easy calving with a good beef merit. But as you go through your groups, as the cows get older, you're trying to push that calving a bit more to get that bit more beef. So those cows, the predominant cow within your herd, that average size cow, you should be trying to aim here for that calving difficulty of maybe less than 4% on your dairy cow calving difficulty, and maximising the beef sub-index within that group. Two examples is Horatio and Gold Rush within this cohort. And finally, herds with those larger cows and with a good few mature cows. You can really hear your calving limits within your herd, try to get build confidence. Maybe next year use a full at 5%, and if you're happy, try to go that bit more and continually trying to push that beef sub-index. Two options in the continental breeds, your Limousine is Nell, and the Charlie Bull is Lapon. Not to get bogged down this table, I just put this table up is to explain a panel that's going to be in the Munster catalogue. So within the dairy catalogue, there's going to be the panels of your different dairy beef options. These are going to be done within one. There's going to be one for your maiden heifers. They're Anguses to use in dairy, Angus bulls to use in maidens. This is just an example of your Angus panel to use on cows within the herd. The important things to note here is firstly is this use on. So it's simplifying what bulls, what cows group they're suitable for. So for example, you have your second row there, that bull is suitable for your cow herd. That's your predominantly, your majority of your cows, that cow is suitable for. And here, Twomey is suitable for second calvers. So the small bit younger cows. So just within that, you can pick your bull just to suit your cows. This is the column then you want to be trying to maximise that beef sub-index to maximise your beef merit of your calves. And then is your carcass weight is something that beef farmers that are buying your calves will be very interested in, the carcass weight of the bull you use. The better the carcass weight, the more potential these have for finishing. So, you're a dairy farmer, you're doing all the right things, and you tell me you're already doing the right things, but you're not getting rewarded within the marketplace. Currently, market is driven by breed, age, and weight. So if you take two Anguses, similar age, similar weight, within the mart, they're going to make the exact same money, and they could be off two very different sires. Problem is, farmers don't know when they're buying these calves, any knowledge of the backbreeding of these calves, they don't know what the genetic merit of these calves. So it's not actually rewarding currently dairy farmers that are doing the right thing and using these higher beef merit sires. But now, I suppose ICBF last spring launched the commercial beef value, or also known as the CBV. And I would describe it as it's the crystal ball. It's like a calf in the mart. It's giving you a prediction of how this calf will actually perform. It's a predictor of what that revenue of the calf when the animal is slaughtered. And it can pull out the differences of two calves that look similar. So just take these two calves that come into the mart, calf A and calf B. They both look very similar, similar age. But the difference between these now will be available is their CBV. There's a prediction here of over €60 difference in the revenue of these two calves at slaughter. So calf A now is a much higher CBV. He's going to be more valuable and more saleable. Where calf B now, when the market changes, gets more used to this commercial beef value, they're the calves that are going to be the more of a challenge to sell when the boats are at risk and there's less availability of markets. Calf B is going to be a much more harder sell. So we should be trying to aim to try to breed those higher CBV calves. Obviously, I spoke a lot about the beef bull, but there's two parts to breeding every calf. There's your cow. It has 50% of the genes in the calf. So 50% of that commercial beef value is coming from the cow and 50% from the sire. Obviously, no one here is saying that you should be trying to breed a beefier cow just because your calf crop, because your cow is to suit your system and you should breed a cow that's most profitable to your system. But what you can do is making sure that you use the right bull on these cows and trying to improve that beef merit. So just take an example here of this poor beef merit bull. If you use a poor beef merit bull on a poor beef merit dairy cow, obviously you're going to get a very poor calf and a poor CBV value is going to be put in this calf. This calf is really one that you want to remove out of the system. Beef farmers, these are the ones that beef farmers are concerned about buying and do not. And if they get buy these calves, they will not be back to buy a calf again. If you use a poor bull on a really good cow, you're still only going to get an average CBV. There's only so much beef coming from your cow, or potential wise, so realistically, that's only going to be an average calf. Although you have a very beefy herd, if you use a poor bull, that calf is not going to be actually that great a quality. So these are the ones you want to remove out of your system. And if you're just using that beef merit bull, even on that poor beef merit cow, use a high beef merit bull, you're going to get a calf with a good CBV, a calf with good beef potential. And obviously, if you use a good beef bull on a very good beefy cow, you're going to get a very good CBV and a very high beef potential calf. The advice, I suppose, from Teagasc next spring is to simplify this. And I spoke about your dairy beef index, but within that, there's going to be the beef sub-index. And you're going to try to tackle calves with a high CBV value. So you should be trying to aim to use bulls with at least €80 or better. And if you have a very poor beef merit herd or crossbreds, you should be aiming for a beef sub-index of €100. I suppose, just in interest of time, I suppose I'm just going to fly through this. It's broken up into stars, but obviously our beef industry is diverse. So if you broke it a crossbreed into stars, all your sucklers are going to be 5 stars, all your dairy are going to be 1 star, because it's such a diverse, and that's not going to be informative to the buyer. So within our stars, it's broken up into your 3 different beef cohorts. So you're going to have your dairy. So if you buy a calf 5 star within the dairy, that's in the top 20% of dairy calves. Vice versa, for 5 star within your dairy beef, that's in the top 20% of calves within the dairy beef animals available nationally. Your CBV, you can actually see the CBV of your calves for next spring already. So if looking at that expected dairy calving profile on ICBF, you can see here the expected EBI, but in the last column is your expected CBV. So if you calves currently that are expected to be born with good CBVs, you can actually use this to get potential beef buyers before your calves are born. If you have animals already, non-breeding animals, you can look up your commercial beef value profile, and that's where all your information is on individual animals and your CBV. But your most important place where this is going to be is in your mark boards. Important to note, it's only going to be in a mark board for genotype calves to make sure there's confidence in the CBV and it's highly accurate, that there's the correct parentage. And where it's going to be is this bottom row. Most of the mark boards are going to be like this at the bottom. This calf here, a CBV of €82, and that's going to rank within the top 4 stars within the breed. I suppose briefly I'm just going to run through some of the options, and all these options here will breed a good CBV calf and will breed a high CBV calf within that 4 and 5 star category. As I mentioned, Matteo, most of you are aware of him. He's very easy calving on heifers, but still very good for beef merit. Really a complete bull. So really recommending for him to be used on your maidens. If you wanted that bit more beef, you're using an Angus on your dairy cows. Here, just not suitable for heifers, only for cows, is Tower Tommy. He's one of the best Anguses on the active bull list for beef merit, and he's also extremely good for gestation length, so suitable to use late in the calving season. Twomey is that bit easier than Tower Tommy, so with them cows, so second calvers, I'd be recommending Twomey. Still very good for your beef merit with a carcass weight of 11 kilos. And Horatio was probably one of the top Angus bulls last year that was used, that really improves your beef crop of your calves with a really high carcass weight, really high reliability in your calving, and really suitable for the majority of your cows within your herd, and is well above breed average for carcass weight. Then obviously within the other breeds, you have your Hereford. So you have Gold Rush here on the left. He's one of the top Herefords available for that beef sub-index. So if you want to breed Herefords, you want to get high CBV, Gold Rush is a really good option. He's relatively easy calving. I wouldn't be suggesting him for second calvers, but for remaining cows within the herd, he would be relatively easy calving. And then Barrow's Nomad, bit more harder calving. I'd be only suitable for mature cows within the herd, but will still will produce high CBV calves. A few other breeds, obviously your Angus and your Hereford are your most predominant breeds, but then looking at, we'll say an option is the Aubrac, is Turlock Magnificent. Very high in your beef sub-index, very high carcass weight, and again, very easy calving, suitable for the majority of your cows. Wouldn't be using them on heifers or very young cows, but for the rest of the cows, we'll have no issues calving. A test sire, very exciting limousine, really good for gestation linked within the breed, and predicted to be easy calving. Obviously, he's a test sire, so you have to be using with caution, but something we'll be very excited with going forward. And then finally, if you really wanted to push the boundaries, two options here would be this Belgian Blue, BB7278. It's going to improve for Belgian Blue, very easy calving. And then Lapin, really now coming into its own within that Charlie breed, is really easy calving, but still really good for beef merit. And if you want to produce really high CBV calves, Lapin is going to be your best option. But again, the two of these bulls should be only used on mature cows. To summarise, I suppose, in general, is your dairy beef index is a tool, but within that, you're going to have to make sure that it's balanced for both. You should be picking your bull to suit your cow. So trying to, within each cow type, pick a calving threshold to suit that cow and then maximise the beef potential of that calf. Now, with your CBV, you're going to get rewarded for breeding higher beef merit calves. If you use a higher beef merit bull, your calves are going to have a higher CBV. These are going to be more valuable in the market, more saleable. And I suppose finally, I just gave a selection of bulls. There's much more bulls available, but out of that selection there, I said at €80 beef sub-index was the target. All those bulls were over that €90 beef sub-index, were greater than 8 kilos on carcass weight, but were still very easy on calving. They were all less than 5% on that calving difficulty. And I suppose that's kind of, yep.
Okay, thanks Alan, thanks a million. Want to ask a question? Or anyone stick up their hand there to ask anything? Okay. Right, I suppose in terms of right, there's a lot of Anguses in the list up there, I suppose. In terms of right, that seems to be the direction of travel. I mean, are the other breed societies looking to, I suppose, get into this market more? The Angus obviously has a bit of a win there with easy calf and short gestation, and they've improved the carcass performance, which is the big one. But what are the other societies up to?
So I suppose within the societies, there's a large variation within the breeders' societies. A lot of breeders obviously have a show goal, they want to breed for the suckler industry, but there is, within all breed societies, there are certain breeders that really see this dairy industry as the future market. And realistically, this is where predominantly our beef is, the most of beef is going to be used. So I'd say there's probably breeders with all breed societies that are actually looking to really drive easy calving while not reducing carcass weight too much.
Okay. Maybe this one, Mick or Jonathan, are they there somewhere? Let's see where they're gone. John, just in terms of right, huge amount of Angus, right? Suits the dairy man, suits the guy buying them too. Is there any danger of a saturation of the Angus market, do you think? Maybe in your own point, or is it such a big breed we don't need to worry about that?
They're such a suitable animal in terms of carcass and general spec that I don't foresee a short-term challenge with marketing.
Yeah, or bonuses even or anything.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. Okay.
So they're just such a suitable animal from a carcass weight point of view that they're meeting loads of customers, and particularly in terms of the retail market.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Question just the floor here. Sorry.
Just you made reference there, just your typical crossbred Hereford, maybe be acquiring a poor CBV value at the moment, and balance that out to put in there a high CBV bull. But that is probably balanced in itself insofar as the high CBV bull will attract a more higher calving difficulty, and that herd of cows won't be able to sustain that calving difficulty. Is that right?
It's definitely a challenge. Obviously, your crossbred cows, there's that smaller cow, so you kind of have to be that cautious. There is bulls there that are really good for your beef subindex. So I gave an option, your Horatio, Tower Tommy, they were both greater than €100 on beef subindex. They're around 3% in calving difficulty. Your crossbred cows would have no issue. Your crossbred cows in there would have no issue. If we even were a bit more cautious, Matteo is still greater than your €100 beef subindex, and he's even easier calving again. And then there's other breeds like Turlock Magnificent or Nathan Roy. If you wanted to go for an Aubrac or a Sailor, both again around that 3%, should be no issue with getting a very high beef subindex. Obviously, you would want to be a bit more careful if you're going into those, or maybe your limousines or your Lapans. They're obviously going to be a bit more challenging calving. So, but within those, there's still options within those lower calving difficulties to produce.
And the CBD concept, what's the general thinking to how long it will take to get a buy-in there amongst purchasers? Or what traction is the whole idea getting at the moment? Because ultimately, it's the people around the ring, they need to believe in this.
Yeah, it's definitely, don't know the answer. Like, it was available last year, but like I said, it was only on marked boards for genotype calves. Very few genotype calves last spring. Obviously, through the National Genotype Programme, there's about 500,000 dairy cows now genotyped. All those calves are going to be genotyped, and all those calves going through the market will have a CBV. So it's going to be much more prominent for this spring, so we'll get a much more idea. I suppose talking to beef farmers on the ground, there's a really strong look for it anyway. Farmers are really looking for it. I would say extremely positive. From a beef industry, that were probably never really that pro any indexes or anything. This was one that I couldn't get over the actual buy-in. And there's anyone that I spoke to is really interested in this. But obviously, it will need to get a lot of media attention to build the interest. And obviously, lads will have to buy their own confidence in it. But within a few years, I would be saying you want to be targeting this, because I would say this is really where the industry is going to go.
And in your first couple of slides there, and you put up probably the predominant reasons why calf buyers didn't return, and that was poor margin, market volatility, and probably from a dairy farmer's perspective, most concerning poor quality calves. Now, I suppose as dairy farmers then is probably the management of the calves immediately post-birth. That is going to become increasingly important. Further trial that calf through their lifetime.
100%. I would say there's really two key components. I spoke on the beef side. I suppose Martin's going to answer predominantly that in his second question. He's going to really talk about that stage, that early life of the calf, and how important it is. And you're right. That really determines how that calf will perform going forward.
And that's probably one element that the purchaser doesn't know how that calf was managed.
So I would always say I would recommend getting a beef customer for your calf. And if you get a beef customer for the calf and you do everything right, that beef customer will be happy with the calf. He'll be back. But if that week wasn't right, there's one thing for sure, he will not be back to buy the calf.
Just as a matter of just show of hands, how many of you here have actually downloaded the CBV of your own calves from ICBF? There we go.
Count them out there.
Count heads.
But like it is a new tool, and that's a real for the whole industry now. Really need to focus on trying to get that message out there.
Look, it's there for you all. If you go into ICBF, just click on your profiles, CBV. You print off the calves. It gives you the CBV of every calf in your farm. The thing is, you have to have your sire registered. We have the calf to beef program we run in Teagasc, and a group of farmers are buying in 2,000 calves between them. 80, probably 5%, 90% of all Frisian males have a sire registered. Okay, I'd say Continentals we saw there wasn't as much bought, but there was about 80-85% again had a sire registered. About 30 to 40% of Angus and Herefords had a sire registered. Okay? Generally when we saw what they were rubbish as well. Boys went off, we didn't know what they were. But the biggest problem often was stock bulls. Okay? Lads are running a couple of stock bulls, just throw down Angus or Hereford, and that's it. That's what's leading to, I suppose, a bit of negativity towards maybe some of the early maturing breeds, that there was uncertain of genetics, no sire down, and often we saw poor quality stock bulls used to mop up with maybe a bull used for a few heifers that were then fired in with the cows, and that was left out, you know. If we had more certainty, I'd say, of the type of bull being used, that it was good quality, you get a lot more buy-in, you have a lot more demand from customers, you know.
The genotyping will solve that issue where there's multiple stock bulls running. Any herd in that national genotype program will clear them mistakes up.
Yeah.
You'd really have to promote farm-to-farm sales then for that, won't you?
Yes.
Like winter Kilmarnock next spring, Paddy's Day, 1,200 calves. The calves that sold, you won't even have the same details up on the board. They're going in so fast. Do you know what I mean? If you want to promote that, you have to be farm-to-farm.
If you take, we have 15 odd farmers or whatever, 16 farmers in that programme. Out of maybe it's 2,500 calves now at this stage. There isn't one bought in the mart.
Yeah.
They all buy often more or less, they might be the exact same guys, but there's a pool going every year. They go back. Yeah, it's like what Alan said. If the calf is healthy, if the price is reasonable, they're not too worried about 20 euros each way either, whether you are either, you know. And if the genetics are somewhere right, they'll be back again. If there's no trouble, they'll be back. You know.
But it's important. That's an important point. And we said here that people weren't aware of the CBV. And a lot of the buyers won't be aware of the CBV, but you can tell them about the CBV. If they come in, they're interested, you can show them, tell them about the CBV. They won't know at the time, but they'll go back and look into it. So it's really all the challenge now was to push that CBV in. Obviously, that's if you have a good CBV calf. Obviously, you won't be pushed in if you have a poor CBV calf.
But that's the thing, you know, those that have good CBV calves should be rewarded. You know, that you have repeat customers, and look, they're not going to be too worried about the price of them if it's going to deliver the goods at the end of the day. You know, that's what it's all about. And the data we're getting, I suppose, Alan, you've been working this with Teagasc for a number of years, like it's fairly solid what we've seen so far, that high CBV calves do deliver. You know, you can fairly hang our hat on it already.
I'd be very confident that your carcass, so predominantly it's run by your carcass traits, and they're very high accuracy and predicting carcass weight. They're high, we call them high heritability traits. So we're very confident that you can predict easily on an animal that's a good carcass weight at a very young age. And then the genomics on top of that adds that extra bit of accuracy.
Okay, all right. Thanks very much, Alan.
I suppose just to finalise before I say, there is going to be a survey going around and just general what you're choosing of beef bulls. I'll ask you all, I'll be handed around there later on. I'd ask you all to fill that in, please.
Okay,
thanks
you. Alan. Thanks a million. Right. Thanks, Martin.
Oops, I'm running out of shirt. Is this working okay, Georgia? You all right? Okay, it's interesting listening to the music of the conversation, and actually that disconnect between the dairy farm and the beef farmer. And this is, I think, something that Warrendale are looking to solve when we really look at it. Because if we take the piece that if we can get the right calf in the right way, the right health, as pointed out, through that proper rearing system and comes out the other end of the food chain, we're changing the way we look at the beef calf a little bit, and we're taking away that distinction. So I think the initiative is enormously important to start striking that balance a little bit between the dairy and the beef farmer. And then the CBV has got a role within that in terms of that farm-to-farm sale piece. So we have an opportunity here to maybe do something that we haven't done before, and I think that's the step in with Munster and Warrendale and Keepack to have a look at that piece. Can we close the loop in it? Right? So there's obviously, we have to work at it, we have to have a desire to do it, but that's the logic, I suppose, to do it. So I'm not going to hold you up too long to get to the main sort of event, but the point about health and are we getting this right? How many here are dairy farmers producing calves? The vast majority. Any specialist calf to beef rearers here looking at this? Okay, one or two there. Okay, so we'll focus a little bit on what happens on the dairy farm, because I think that's important, and I think that you guys are quite clear, or Warrendale are quite clear, that certain things have to happen with that calf. And it is important to know that what we do with that calf, particularly in the first couple of months of life, particularly in the milk phase, will have a huge impact on that calf's outcome. And we know that slower growing animals or animals that are slow to finish, pneumonia is a massive bugbear in there. So how we handle pneumonia in those early calves is enormously important. That applies to dairy and beef. And with very, very good science to say that we get a reduction in production there. So we're all familiar with the extreme end of animals that don't do well, but often when I look at that, there could be 20-30% of that group that are not doing well because we haven't managed the whole group correctly. So just keep it in mind, there's a direct link between calf rearing and lack of performance. It's a significant cost. The first thing on a dairy farm, What are you going to do with that dry cow? Are we going to get all those elements right so that cow is going to produce enough beestings and also that calf is going to be healthy coming out? These are all various factors. Most of you are probably covering them off because you want an easy calving period and so on. And I just be cautious maybe a little bit this year. We have in some farms cows dried off quite early. Forage quality is very variable on farms. We're going to get different responses in those dry cows. And I'd suggest monitoring of dry cows very consistently over the winter period, not taking an entire holiday off them. We'll get a better outcome in terms of how those cows are going to calve down. And a percentage of cows may have to be fed in the last 2 or 3 weeks before calving to improve colostrum quality and volume in particular in some of the herds. So just keep that in mind and making sure we get our vaccines into those cows beforehand, particularly when we're talking about the scour vaccines. Okay, so what's actually going to happen here? What's the first point of arrival of the calf? It's the landing platform. I'm not going to say that that's either a Tipperary or Limerick calf. It's going to be somewhere else that's more dirty, right? But the landing platform, how quick we get these calves away from mum. And a lot of you are in the group calving environment. We're going to get a lot of manure around there. That manure contains everything that we want to get away from. Rotavirus, crypto, coronavirus, coccidiosis, you name it, it's there. And generally the first meal a calf will get in the calving area is manure. They'll stand up and they'll suck the tail, they'll suck whatever they see. And the first meal is often manure. And this is where we establish a lot of our scour infections in particular. If you look at the incubation periods behind scour infections like viruses, generally about 5 to 6 days. When crypto and when our rotavirus lands, it's generally in that first week or at the end of that first week. So we're picking them up in the calving areas. Can we move them fast enough? So yeah, we've different rates of scour and they happen at different times. So most commonly 5 days is our kickoff. Under 5 days, it's just bacteria we're picking up. Generally E. coli's we're picking up from dirty equipment or we're picking it up off the ground and we get acutely ill animals. Our crypto can really hit us over an extended period, up to about 3 weeks. But as that calf gets older and has more body mass, they're really able to cope with crypto better. Crypto is a real starvation disease. So the bigger, stronger those calves are, that often they'll weather it out. Their own immune system kicks in. Any other viruses in there, we're going to have a problem. Our coccidiosis generally after 3 weeks, that we're going to see that it takes longer to incubate, even though they've picked it up from mum or picked it up from the calving pen. So all these scours will occur at different times. By looking at a scour, you won't know what it is, right? But the timing will often tell you, are you a virus, are you a bacteria, are you parasites? And we can judge it, but the treatment is generally very, very similar, right? So when we're looking at these calves being born, I'm very conscious of calf body weight, particularly when we're in the high EBI scenarios and some of the crossbred, we're getting quite small calves, sub 35 kilos and under. And really, if we're going to move from mum very fast in that first half hour, we got to get them under a heat source. So we really talk about what we call hot boxing calves for that first 24 hours in particular, particularly in that colder weather, Feb, March. So get them in under a lamp, they'll dry off because mum may not have a chance to lick them and I mightn't necessarily want her to. Get them in there, get them dry, and the heat alone will help them with their absorption of colostrum. Wind chill and hypothermia in young calves is often a problem. And in that first 24 hours, their first dung is sterile. We don't have to do a lot of cleaning out here as long as it's dry. By the time you hit second meal, second dung, we're starting to get into infectious problems. So we try and move them through these areas 24 hours. Big meal, let them settle. If they're coming to you again for feed, 12, 14, 16 hours later, that's often enough, particularly if we've tubed and gone in with 3 or 4 litres of colostrum. So I'm not determined you have to get in that next meal by 6 hours. Let them sleep, let them heat up after meal 1. Okay. What I find here too, there's a real opportunity at this point to pop in our intranasal vaccine. So some of the intranasals are licensed from 0 days or a day old. So we will look at putting in an intranasal pneumonia vaccine at this point. Right, so 5 calves there, a box of 5 vaccines, and they're 1 to 2 days, 3 days old. Give them all the vaccine. I don't know why the screen is blinking on and off. We'll bear with it. Mind your backs. Picking up a wet calf is a nightmare when you stoop down if you don't get down properly. They'll slip out of your hands. So if you find some way to drag them around the place, better off. Okay, colostrum. You're all familiar with colostrum. What it does, it's very important. I'm not going to labour it, But just it's real interesting. A lot of research on colostrum now is telling us what they take in that first 12 hours has a big impact on their later growth rates. Because there's a lot of hormones and other factors inside in colostrum that we're not aware of, or we're not aware of properly what they do, and they have a big impact on the calf's immune system. So it's not just the local stuff that it does and keeps away that scour in that initial part, it's really driving that animal's immune system over time. So I'm not worried about the why you should give colostrum. I think a lot of you guys, you've nailed that. You know why you have to do it. The pain in the ass is how and what. How are you going to do this if you've got a lot of calving going on? How do you get it right on a consistent basis? We're generally pretty good in February. End of February, getting into March, we're starting to get tired and things get sloppy. So often we have to have a situation, say in the 1st of March, all equipment has to be cleaned properly or thrown out if it's getting damaged. Some people are using milking units. The one big thing we found in Ireland on a basic study on colostrum quality was the timing of milking is incredibly important. The closer you are to the calving with milking the cow, the better the quality of the colostrum is. So it's not always possible. You have a big herd, you're milking morning and evening. You might be milking once a day at that point. You have one big collection point. But you could have cows that are 8 hours out, 6 hours out. That'll affect the quality and it'll affect the response. So can we pull it tighter? I'm not recommending everyone to get an individual milker because again, they can be a pain in the ass. They're hard to clean. They're not serviced. They can be problematic as well, but it might be the solution for some of you. Okay, so just think about the timing. Are we getting the cows milked? That's what I'm saying about point of cleaning. This was a farm where we had a problem with calves dying at about day 2, day 3. They were dying from acute bacterial infections. There was no cleaning done on the individual cluster dump units. They were being washed through with hot water, not being sanitized. So we got a lot of Clostridium here killing calves. And just a point about colostrum overall, often we think it's a magic fluid. It doesn't go off. It's got kind of some sort of amazing magical properties. It goes off probably quicker than your normal milk. There's a lot of bacteria in there. There's blood, there's dung and so on inside it. If we store it poorly, don't chill it down and get it into a fridge, it's not going to store well. You know? So, and even though a parlour is cold and concrete and all the rest of it is, we really need to get it chilled down. There's no point putting it into a fridge inside in a dirty bucket. It's not going to help you. It'll double up bacteria about every 20 minutes if the temperature in it is quite warm. So we need to get it clean. How does that affect the calf? The bacteria, all that in there, prevents them from absorbing the antibodies out of the colostrum. So the quality is poor. So timing of milking and keeping it clean, for me, is incredibly important. So how do we check it? Always ask the calf first. And I know there's a lot of instruments for looking at colostrum and so on, and you'll do it for a while, but again, you get tired, you mightn't be consistent with it. And a lot of our colostrum is quite good coming out of the cow, relatively so. But on large herds, or any of the herds that are calving down, in February at least once I'll take 12 calves and blood them, 1 to 5 days of age, maybe up to a week. Take a blood and see if the protein has come through in the blood. Vet can do that very, very simply for you, and some of them can do it in-house now. And give you an idea, is your colostrum story working? If not, then you need to go back and have a look. Do it again in March, particularly early March when getting into the later calvers. And you get an idea. Also, if you have staff in the farm and lads working for you, are they actually putting the colostrum in or not? What's going on? All right, so ask the calf. I won't go through all the detail, just note, in Ireland, when we start looking at the lab reports, the bloods going into the labs, regional vet labs, we can get up to 40% of them or more are too low. Right, it's still very, very common. The only thing is it's a bit skewed. They're generally blood's been taken from sick herds that they have problems. You can use these guys, Brixes, to take a drop of colostrum, you put it on the plate and have a look at it and see if it's good enough. Again, I find people will do it very well at a certain point and then they kind of back off it. So I'm interested in you just testing the calves. Vaccines on the breeder farm, I know the lads have a stipulation around vaccine and they'll talk about that. I will be always looking, if we're looking to sell calves on, if you can get in that intranasal pneumonia vaccine in those first couple of days, it'll make a difference to you also if you're going to hold that calf for 4 weeks. Particularly against RSV. You'll get sudden death or dramatic death in calves aged 2 weeks, 3 weeks from RSV. It's good to have a vaccine in there. Again, your vaccinations prior with cows, there's rotacorona, you're very familiar with those. And there is a crypto vaccine on its way. Should be out. It mightn't be out in time for next season, I'm not sure. You'd have to talk to the company or talk to your own vets. But that can be given with the Rotovac vaccine. Okay, after about 2 weeks of age, we start looking at Pasteurella vaccines then. If we're running into trouble with pneumonia and later life with calves, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, we're starting to look at Pasteurellas. It's sensible to start coming in with Pasteurella vaccines from about a fortnight old. Right? And the big advantage about vaccination is, whatever about the cost, your level of treatment of calves after that will reduce. The ability of the calf to survive the infections will get higher. And we'll go back to that days of sickness. If we have calves with pneumonia, they will cause problems in later life, regardless of how successful you've been with an antibiotic. We have a thing in Europe and some of the larger farms we work with low antibiotic usage, is if a heifer is treated twice, 3 times with antibiotics for pneumonia as a young animal, they're not allowed to be bred, because they'll be culled as first lactation anyway for poor production. And that's the sort of way we got to start thinking about our stock. Okay, the calf that's bought, a lot of these, they might be variable age depending on how good we are in registration. Variable immune status because of the colostrum. They can already be carrying disease. They can be sick already. They can be from a herd that's sick. They can be dehydrated, and often they're really tired. And I like that farm-to-farm piece because we eliminate some of that. So these are all the kind of the negatives that we can solve before we get there. Just an easy one for yourselves, if you're not sure about hydration in calves, looking at the eye and looking how sunken it is. If you guys start seeing a sunken eye, you're probably gone too far down the road. But pick up the skin on the neck or pick it up on the back, and if it springs back and goes flat very quickly, that calf is probably hydrated enough. If it's slow going back, it means we're low on fluid. And if you see that, so that's what we call the skin test or a tent test. Pull the skin, give it a twist, and if it's slow going back, that calf needs an electrolyte pretty promptly. So in large groups, if you're unsure, pick up skin around the place and you know which ones to actually throw an electrolyte into. Okay, I'm not recommending that the Wagyu calves are brought into the sitting room. They certainly don't have to be. It could be a cause for divorce. But just be aware about when this pneumonia piece happens. Generally, it's older, but there's still 10% of deaths in calf under a month of age are related to pneumonia, right? About 30% over that. So pneumonia prevention is based on vaccines and understanding the environment. It's both. And the one thing to be really clear on, there is no clear science, evidence-based yet, that absolutely nails what's the best environment to put a calf into. All of you have different houses, different arrangements, different orientation, but there's common rules we can follow that make it better. So we'll just go through a couple of those little rules. I'm constantly asked to design the best calf house, and most of the time I'm converting another building, and you follow some rules and you'll get it 90% right if you follow the rules. Let's see what this moves on. Okay, so in the environment side of it, there's lots of reasons for pneumonia. There's all those different factors that influence it, but the big ones inside in the shed are these 4 biggies. Have we got air change at bed level? 10, 15 centimetres above the bed. That's where the calf's nose is, not out in the alleyway. How are we dealing with that shared airspace with adults? What's the moisture? If you have a lot of moisture inside in the shed, it'll be cold, and that dampness will carry bacteria. What's the temperature? Airspeed. If we have too much wind chill in there, we're going to get a problem. And how many calves are in there? Have we given them enough space? One of the biggest cures for pneumonia is more space. How we group them? Have they got enough water, which is often a problem in automatic feeder systems? And are we clean enough? Okay, most Irish sheds are freezers. They're too open, they're made of concrete and steel, which are thermal sinks. So you're often colder inside than outside. You all know that from discussion groups standing inside in the shed. The only moving parts are the doors. And often, if the shed is built wide, there's a tendency we're building new sheds in squares. They're square blocks, and they're often built way too wide. It's easy for a builder to put up shuttering in a square like that, right? But if we get a wide square, we can't vent it across. How you orient it, is it facing south, east, north, so on. So every site will be a little bit different, and I'll be trying to get the side of the shed into the southwest. So I get maximum airflow onto a major side, so I get wind across that shed, or I get air movement across the shed that's baffled. Air change we need, as I said. biggest issues for me, wet and dirty beds, moisture inside in the shed, and avoiding draft, avoiding wind chill. Okay, just know with a newborn up to 2 weeks, their optimum temperature to grow is between 15 and 25 degrees. There isn't a shed in the country that's going to be that, and I'm not suggesting we heat it up like a pig shed. Absolutely not. But if a calf nests down, they will get up to 15, 20 degrees inside in a dry bed, right? If we avoid wind chill, we'll get that. Up to a month old, it changes, and that bottom arrow here, that indicates the lower critical temperature. So once we go below 5 degrees here, that calf's immune system is going to be shot. They're not going to be able to fight off infection, they'll just shiver, right? So we really, the drier and better and warmer you are, the more we get this more tolerant. So the older calf has more tolerance. You can get them down to 0 degrees and you can cope with it better. So things we do, just to give you a point about Ireland, this was in Gertie College there over a 4-year period, and we looked at the temperatures. On average, we didn't get above an ambient temperature in 4 years above 10 degrees until May. Now, Gortine is a spectacularly cold place, right? In fairness. But the big sheds there actually remain cold inside, and when we look at a max-min thermometer inside in those sheds, often the sheds at night time in February, March will drop below -1, -2. And that's a challenge for young calves unless you're getting the nutrition right and getting the energy into them. So if we look how a shed works, in theory, they're meant to produce heat and the hot air goes out the top, right? That's what we're told. And we design the shed that way. Air comes in the side. Bob's your uncle, we got ventilation, right? What actually happens, in here is cold and it's often warmer outside, right? These guys don't generate a lot of heat, not up to 3-4 weeks of age. They're very poor thermal buoyancy because they're drinking milk primarily, not ruminants. They don't produce a lot of heat, their body mass is too low, they don't get air out. We get very modicum of air in and we can get a stagnant environment very quickly in a brand new shed that's designed for calves. So often we have to rely on wind. Wind cutting across the shed. So it hits the side, and when we hit the side and we hit an opening, that air will fall off, particularly if it's cold. If we get something like that coming off a high wall, particularly an 8-foot shuttered wall, we'll get a downdraft. So you'll often get calves at a particular side of a shed and they run into significant problems because of downdraft. So we've lots of ways of preventing that. Canopy, changing the way the air comes in, baffling it more. So on the windward side we could have vented sheeting, on the leeward side we could have Yorkshire boarding. Yorkshire boarding is 25% open, vented sheeting is often about 10-15% open depending what it is. And that depends on your site and depends on the orientation of the shed. So I'm often again asked, what's the ideal shed? I must stand in the yard and take out the compass and go, where's the wind coming from? Then you start designing where you put your shed. Remember, the only moving parts are the doors, and that's our tendency. We'll open the door to let air in. The minute you create a narrow opening, you get high wind speed going through it. You have to be careful. So this guy did a great job, put up Yorkshire boarding here, but created a wind tunnel. So the air sped up between the two buildings, and we got a very, very high level of air coming in the Yorkshire boarding, and we got significant downdraft on the calves, and the pneumonia rate went up in the shed. So he did the right thing, but he put it in the wrong place. That makes sense, lads. Not thinking about how that air moves around the building. So Yorkshire boarding I really like, but it's pushed a little bit too much sometimes. I'm very positive about it, but in the right places. So that's generally a 2-inch gap, 2-inch gap, 6-inch board. You can do it with a 4-inch board or 4-inch gap and maybe 1.5 inches and a 5-inch board, something like that. But we wanted about, as I say, 25% void. You can use tubing. You got to seal down the shed. So we want no air coming in beyond the positive pressure tubes. If you're going to go for these, they're very, very good, but get them designed for the building, designed for the shed. On the capacity of the building, the number of calves that are there, so the fan speed and the air holes are cut in the right place. Be careful just buying them willy-nilly off the internet. They're not necessarily designed for your building. A couple of companies who will design them according to the building size, and they work quite well. Watch cold air being blown in with these, particularly if they're orientated wrong. Okay, just also listen to the calves. Often when I went to farms, everyone would pile in the straw before I arrived. It was like the priest coming, right? Get out the nice china. I'd always look at what the calves are doing. So they'll always find the driest spot. So take your time, have a look. That's all dry. This poor fella, he's Billy No Mates, and he didn't have any friends or any room in here. But generally, the minute we start to dig up the floor, we find the problem. And people talk about going down on your knees. If your knees are wet coming up, it's shocking. But go in with a fork and you really see whether you got drainage or not. Right? If calves are sitting on that type of floor surface with that chill in it, their lower critical temperature is higher, which means their tolerance of cold is lower. They can't tolerate it as well. So we want falls, up to 5% falls under the straw beds to get the liquid away. And builders will get real pissed off at this because it's it's difficult enough to do it. But that's what we look at. And decent drains. This is one that we just tried out in the farm, worked quite well. It was, again, a 4-inch square filled with pea gravel. There was a good fall coming into it, and we just took out the pea gravel at the end of the year. It was just a nice, simple drain that didn't block. So we know that if they nest, see if it comes back. So on dry concrete, they're very tolerant up to higher temperatures. Ooh. That's not good. Calf lying on dry straw, tolerances drops a bit. Calf lying on wet straw, not great. Okay? So really cold here, getting really cold here, a bit more tolerant here. I don't know if this will play now with the... This is a simple conversion. It wasn't a new calf house, it was the back end of a barn. We used the existing wall. It was actually Yorkshire boarded up here, if I remember rightly, and canopies placed here to break the downdraft on a high wind day. Very simple pens. The investment was concrete on the floor to get the fall out to the front. They put in quite a lot of concrete in there. And one really nice thing on this particular farm they did, might get to it now. Apologies about this breaking up, lads, on the screen. We put in a calf kitchen. Really useful. Hot water, cold water, separate from the area, not getting a lot of water out in where the calves were. And that made actually quite a big difference to the management overall. So that was a conversion in the back of a shed, not a new calf shed. Okay, they're jacketed because a relatively big volume shed, hard enough to keep them warm inside in the big volume. Okay, point about the nutrition. At 10 degrees Celsius, I can feed them about 725 grams of milk solids to get about a 0.4 growth increase. I hit 0 degrees, I got to go up 100 grams. The colder it gets, the more feed you put in. If I get an outbreak of pneumonia or scour, or I get wind chill, up the feed. Go up 10% in feed straight away. That'll help you more than getting out the bottle of Draxon. So the one thing we're not good at is changing our feed rates. And remember, whole milk, probably about, I can't remember exactly, but maybe between 10 and 20% more energy than a lot of the replacers, right? So if you're on replacer, you have to up the feed rates if you're running into cold environments. Okay, weighing for me is king. If you can follow the growth rates in calves, it'll tell you who's underperforming. That's probably a better indication of whether you've got subclinical pneumonia causing problems within the farm. So a weigh band is incredibly useful. It's not accurate across different farms, but if you're doing the same person does it the same way every time in your own farm, you get a good idea of what's going on. The last point, just about cleaning. If we're to follow the rules, I've got to rinse, soak, detergent, scrub, wash, rinse, dry. I'm not going to do that. It's going to take me too long. None of you are going to do it, unless the most diligent. So I'll get into large volumes. We often use IBCs just with cold water plumbed in, rinse off the milk, get it out of the teats, throw it in the next IBC with 1 in 1,000 per acetic into it and leave them there. Sanitize them at least once a day. We cut down our volume of bacteria and we cut out a lot of what we call nutritional scouring. So your spend here is on paracetic. But even if we use half of those volumes, you can get a lot of equipment into it. And the advantage about an IBC, you can throw in all the feeders and the de-feeders and everything into it without a big deal. So simplify, but make it big enough so you can get things sanitized well. Okay, so if we're looking at solutions on this stuff, and I know we've done a quick run around, design your system, how you're going to do the work. American system, 30, 40,000 calves, it just runs on a system. Mortality there is pretty okay, but they have much drier weather even though they get more cold. So it's easier probably to manage that in a certain respect. Improve calf resistance, colostrum, 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 and good vaccination, enough feed for the environments you're in. So a blanket saying 2 litres for everybody mightn't be right in some farms, 2 litres morning, evening. Getting your hygiene right, get the nutrition right, have some standard protocols you follow, and just nice diagnostics now with vets that can ultrasound scan lungs and pick up lung lesions. And often we find we get a sick calf in a pen, we scan the whole pen, you could find 30% of them actually have lung lesions in there that you can treat, you can get after. So that's just a quick run around, lads. Antibiotics are not the solution to calf health. I'm very clear on that. I've worked in enough systems where we don't need them. So it's about us doing the right things. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Okay. I suppose straw, Martin, you mentioned straw. It's a problem in a lot of areas. It's very expensive if you can find it, although you have it, I think.
Yeah, I'm delighted.
Any alternatives, or is hay an alternative, or peat, or wood chip, or?
Okay, so if I'm really, really lacking in bedding, I'm really trying to concentrate on those early calves. That first kind of 3 weeks, 4 weeks, if we can get them nesting. Older guys, when they're eating a ration and so on, will tolerate different environments and tolerate different bedding. If I'm really stuck, wood chip underneath to try and take the water away, layer of straw on top to create a nest. Calf slats, a lad mentioned it last night, useful, but again, layer of straw to allow nesting on. So we have to be a little bit adaptable, but try and focus on those early calves.
Okay. In terms of the vaccination policies, I suppose it's becoming more prevalent now that we have to vaccinate because we have a lot more pressure on farms, it seems. What is the thought process? You mentioned you're getting your RSV or PI3 vaccines. IBR, is that as time critical, or would you leave it off a while?
Yeah, look, often the herds they're doing all the cows and have been for a while, and general latent carriers or carriers of IBR are quite low in herds. If IBR is definitely identified as a problem at that 2-3 week stage in calves, you can do intranasal as well. So you can do an intranasal IBR, intranasal RSV PI3 early, and you can get that covered. But often we're not going into with our first IBR into the muscle once they're over 3 months of age, June, July. So depending on what's been diagnosed.
Okay. Anyone else want to shout up anything?
Anything else?
Martin,
Yep.
elaborate a little bit there on, you made reference there on one of your slides to vintage sheet on one side and shape of the Yorkshire board on the other. Can you just
Yeah.
meat in the bones of that there and the thinking behind it?
Okay, so if I'm looking at a shed in a yard, and it took me a while to come to this now. Often it is Yorkshire boarding or vintage sheet, something is a solution. It goes around the whole shed, right? But we're really not thinking about what the wind is doing. So you have to try and understand that if you're in a very exposed site and you're getting a high southwesterly all the time and you're getting a lot of wind at that building and you're creating draft with it, you need to slow it down coming in. So sometimes vintage sheeting is a very good role because there is less opening in it and it slows everything down. So we still get air in because we've got the force of the wind, but we're not getting the draft. On the leeward side then, I want more opening because I want to get air out, or if there's wind coming from that side occasionally, I want to try and get it into the building. So I'll put Yorkshire board on that side. So sometimes when I'm doing a building we'll try this, do that, and leave a bit of flexibility. You might move some of it around. So don't lock yourself into, this is the system. Because then you'll try and persist with it and you'll lose calves.
And just in relation to housing in general, Martin made reference to there, whereby a lot of people will have a purpose-built calf shed.
Yeah.
And it's to do every calf from day 3 up as far as 8-9 weeks, whereby in that bracket there, a calf at 8 weeks needs a different kind of a house than what a week-old calf does. So in light of that, what is your opinion of calf jackets?
Okay, so design the house for the 8-9 week ones.
Okay.
Because you can create environments for the young ones by either micro-environments with canopies or jacket them, right? So I can have a very big shed that's freezing inside, but jacket up, nest them, canopy, and even in some of those where I start off for the first week with calves, we put in some red lamps in what I call the nursery pen until they're getting going. So I add heat young and I close down young to allow the bigger ones open. So I design the shed for big and I work with small. Don't design small and then try and fit in big. That makes sense?
Yeah. And finally, Martin, I found a piece on the blood testing of the calves at an early stage. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Is there going to come a time when you're going to think that's common protocol? Like, does our relationship with our vet, will that become a bigger conversation with our vet?
I think so, because from my experience as a veterinary practitioner, we bloody hell, dripping calves. What a fruitless task a lot of the time. You know, it's very frustrating, it's expensive, it doesn't work for you. So we're calling at that end. If I was doing a bit of colostrum testing beforehand, a bit of blood testing before, and I could point you a little bit, we could save a lot of grief. So I think that conversation has to be had. And I think in fairness to the lads, when we're looking at Warrendale and that piece and bringing those calves through, we have to be far more responsible about what we're starting off with so they can get the outcome, so the system is sustainable. If we break it along that chain, these boys won't be happy, Keepback won't be happy, you won't be happy. It won't work out for us. So we need to be smart about this and say, are we willing to put in that little bit of effort at the start so we get the outcomes that we deserve? Yeah, is that a reasonable point, lads? Yeah. Okay.
I suppose I'm asking with respect while we're waiting for the CBD concept to take off, and if I have somebody come into my farm to buy calves and I have a record and I say, look, that is where this calf was tested again at X number of weeks. Does it have a part to play there?
Yeah, it could. If I'm selling 100 calves to somebody and I say that, look, I got 12 of these calves tested, I know in February, I know in March, and I'm coming through, my colostrum manager is pretty good, I'm sound, I'm not going to test every single one of them, right? Colostrum is good, I've given them a vaccine, this all cost me a tenner a head, I'm just telling you. And generally that repeat buyer, they know anyway. They know, because they'll know the impact when they bring the calves back. But if that's worth a tenner to you, 20 quid, if that's another leverage point for you to argue the toss and have the row in the yard, no bother, go do it.
Okay. Just regards on shed type, what about a lot of farmers, especially on the guys buying the calves, they have these open-sided sheds. So you know they're not the A-roof ones. What sort of ventilation are needed there? Is it as critical the fact is open on one side, or?
Again, if I'm open on one side, I have no control. Doesn't matter. The wind is going to howl in there, the rain, the snow, anything could happen, or it could be just exactly right. So you never know on the day. So if a young calf in there, can I shelter him? Can I make sure his bed is dry? And can I feed him enough? If I get those right, often the rest of it is fine. Where I often find with the open fronted sheds, they've no opening out the back. So often just the back part of it needs to be Yorkshire boarded or vented so the air can blow through. They're not a sealed box, right? So I do that, dry bed, shelter, feed. Okay.
In regards to about cleaning the equipment every day or throwing them into the parasitic gases, teats and feeders, I find it very hard to get farmers to just change them. Should it be changed every year on the 10 teat feeders?
If you get wear on them, they got to come off. I mean, anybody's using automatic feeders here, it's one thing we're really, really, really strict on. The minute you get wear in a teat and automatic feeder, take it off. You're going to change their drinking speeds, and you're going to affect them. I will definitely change out. If in a seasonal system, my view is on big volumes, change out that equipment every year. Change out those disposables every year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, Martin. What's your experience of artificial colostrum, and how effective is it compared to the retain?
Great on a Sunday with the calf born out in the fields that you're trying to get to the match. You know what I mean? That's what it's for. It is. That's its place. It's an emergency item. That's it. No, I need colostrum from cows.
So more for convenience than...
It's pure convenience. I haven't got any. I'm not speaking to my neighbours because I fell out with them, and I need something to give a calf. That's what it's for me.
And if tested, Martin, like your ZST or whatever, how will it compare with the real?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'd be lying to you to give you an answer on that. I'm sure there's some work done by somebody. It's something I just haven't gone near because I regard it as a sticky plaster. All right.
Okay. Any final ones just to wrap up? Okay.
Freezing of the...
Freezing colostrum.
Good for obviously using freezing.
Yeah, look, I mean, again, freeze it clean. Try and freeze it quickly. So if I'm taking warm colostrum, I generally try and stand that bucket in kind of in the milking parlour in the trough of cold water, just to take the heat out of it. and I'll get it chilled down as fast as I can then inside in the fridge. Always think about before you freeze it, how are you going to thaw it? Because that's the pain in the ass, right? So I know lots of people put in milk cartons. I don't have patience for that, right? How long are you going to look at it for? So I will freeze it in 1 litre in freezer bags, double the bags, 1 litre bags, place them on a tray inside in the freezer so they flatten out, they get a big surface area. So when I want to feed a calf, then I take 3 bags, 4 bags, and I drop the bags into a bucket. They're thawed out much, much quicker. And once I get it thawed and the ice is gone, I'm tubing him and I'm back to bed. Right? So maybe think about thawing before you think about storing.
Okay. Right, look, we might
Thanks,
move on to
that's
our
enough
next speaker.
time. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Alan, good on you.
Martin there. Thanks very much. Okay, our final speakers then, we have Jamie Brownrigg and Tom
I'll
Richardson
let you do
from,
that now because I'm not doing it right. Here you go.
from Warrendale Wagyu in Yorkshire. So they're going to talk to you a bit about their business and what they're offering dairy farmers. They're looking actively for people to, I gather, produce Angus or Wagyu calves, and they're going to give a bit of an explanation about that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Martin. We've listened twice now to what he's got to say, and it's obviously that he said this morning you learn from your mistakes, and it's very practical advice and very useful. I think even the farmers will have picked up on things. I'm Jamie Brownrigg. I'm the production director for Warrendale Wagyu. Thank you for coming to listen to us, first and foremost. I know you've had 4 probably torrentially wet days, and then on a dry day you choose to come and sit in here, so we'll keep it to probably 3 hours, and then you're fit to go after that. Okay. You know, what you'll hear today is our journey from 2016. Essentially, not something that we've been brought up with, not something that the team's been brought up with. We've been brought up with shape, conformation, a pride in showing your animals, and this was very, very new to us. But however, it's something that we strongly believe in, and if it pays and it brings meat quality and a premium to your product as dairy farmers, then why not, is what we say. It's just about doing something a little bit different, but doing it well. Okay.
Okay, I'm Tom Richardson, so I work with Jamie in the Wagyu business. We've been in it 6-7 years or so, and the reason we're here today is to talk about a partnership with Keepack and Munster Bovine and Warrendale Wagyu Ireland that we're embarking on, and we'll just start off by giving you that won't work, a quick overview of who we are. Just set a bit of context and what we've done in the UK, because I think it's relevant to why we've come over here and what we're setting out to achieve. So we're part of a farming group called Warrendale Group. So we're a Yorkshire family farming business, relatively young, I guess, set up in 1984, and we've been primarily in the poultry industries early, and more latterly into Wagyu beef. So we've got a number of businesses under Warrendale Farms. First one being a feedstock business, and that's essentially providing manures into biomethane plants to create biogas. That's a fairly new venture. The pasture eggs, so we're a big free-range egg producer, about 1.7 million eggs a week, supplying those into retail in the UK, so we're one of the largest free-range egg producers. And we're the biggest producer of Wagyu cattle in the UK, having started out probably 12 years ago into Wagyu. And it was probably born from our experience in integrated schemes within pigs and poultry that we thought we could do something differently in beef, try and bring the supply chain together and really focus on quality. So within our Wagyu businesses, there's Warrendale Wagyu, which is a meat trading business, so we're selling meat. There's Warrendale Wagyu Ireland, which I'll come on to, and then there's Warrendale Wagyu Farmers, which is our farmer group back in the UK. And then the final bit is we've got a land and farm portfolio, so we've got about 35 farms across the UK. A lot of those are let out to predominantly poultry producers. So we're doing a bit of farming in hand, but also letting farms. So we're a fairly diverse agricultural group in the UK with a good background based in Yorkshire. So our UK scheme, just to give you a bit of background as to what we've done in the UK with Wagyu. So we're around 30,000 head of dairy-bred Wagyu cattle, all predominantly Holstein, bigger frame cows, crossed with our selected genetics. We're working with around 750 farmer partners across the UK. So that would be from Devon right up to Aberdeen and everywhere in between. So we've got a big network of farms that we've built over the last 6-7 years as we've grown our business. We're currently processing around 150 to 200 cattle a week. We started off in 6-7 years ago. I think we processed 2 cattle, didn't we, Jamie? And so we've kind of grown and doubled our business every year since. So
We gave them away for nothing.
yeah,
well.
so we've learned along the way. And we're the first UK beef scheme that's DNA verified back to sire. So we make sure that all our cattle, we take a DNA profile and then we link that back to the sire. And that's great in terms of supply chain integrity for our customers. But also it gives us a great degree of data to look at bulls, to look at performance right through our supply chain. And we're spanning the whole supply chain, so we're supplying beef into retail, food service, our own online business. So at the moment we'll be doing 500-600 deliveries direct to home a week. And we're just starting doing a bit of export predominantly into Europe. So we're fairly diverse. We've got a good spread of customers across a wide range of markets. And I think our farmers is really the lifeblood of our business. We've got some great relationships, guys who have been with us from the start and have grown with us. And it's really important that our team, so Jamie, myself, we're from farming backgrounds. All our team are pretty much from farming backgrounds, and it's really important when we're dealing with farmers that we know what we're doing, we know how to talk to farmers, and we know what's important to them. And that's why we've, I guess, been a bit different in our UK industry in that we're a farmer-led supply chain company. We're not a beef processor. We're there to service our farmers, but also sell them and create value for that group. We've got a video, sorry, after this one, but this is just quickly our timeline. So the Wagyu business is a young business, only 6-7 years old, and when cycle of our beef, it's 3 years really from insemination through to slaughter. It's not a huge amount of time, and we've made some great strides or hit some great kind of things within that 7 years. And I'll just pick a couple of those things out. So a couple of really important retail customers. Waitrose, premium retail in the UK, and Aldi was our second retail customer we started with 3 years ago. We've been recognised by Compassion in World Farming for our calf scheme, so putting a value to those dairy calves and our protocols, our vaccination things, which we're really proud of, and I think we're probably going to embark on that and try and get a further award because it was back in 2019, so it's been a really important part of our business. And then I'll talk a bit about what we're doing in terms of the meat. As Jamie said earlier, our Wagyu cattle are slightly different to traditional beef breeds in that we're looking primarily at meat quality and conformation, while important comes second. And the latest part of our journey is why we're here today is to talk about Warrendale Wagyu Island. So we think there's an opportunity in partnership with Keepack and Munster to set up a scheme, a dairy-bred scheme in Ireland, and it's key for us to have the right partnerships in terms of being able to take those calves right through and serve our customers with a focus on consistency, quality and security for all involved.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's helped us grow from scratch to 750 farmers today is because essentially the whole team are farming. We've backed ourselves on treating the farmers correctly. When things go right or wrong, we're dealing with livestock. It's how we rectify that. When we first met with Keepack, we saw a lot of similarities in treating people fair, and what they said resonated with us. So we believe it will be a good partnership, and at the end of the day, good word of mouth will spread, and that's what we aim to build the business on here in Ireland going forward.
And then so just a bit about why Wagyu. You may not have heard about what it is. So it's a breed that originated in Japan. Wa means Japanese, Gyu means cow. Genetics came out in the 90s and then to America, Australia. So we have some bulls that we bring out from Australia, but we're also doing our own bull breeding program in the UK now, just to give some security of supply of bulls. But the predominant reason we got into Wagyu was around that meat quality, and there was a value to the end consumer, and there was a premium for selling high marble beef, which really gave consistency of quality. And then crossing it with dairy breeds, predominantly Holstein in the UK, gives a real consistency in terms of the meat. So we've got selected bulls, a relatively narrow pool of dams, and we're getting really great consistency of meat coming right through, which I think for end beef consumers is really important, that if they're going to spend a bit more on beef, they want to be guaranteed that the eating quality is fantastic. And then the whole bringing a new breed into the UK, we wanted to tie together end-to-end the supply chain. The dairy bred scheme was good, big tick in terms of calf welfare, but also carbon footprint and all that kind of stuff, because it's utilising beef out of dairy. And the whole purpose of our business, as I said, is to tie the genetics right through to the end consumer, and us manage and oversee everything in between, and provide some security to our farmers and also to our customers that the beef's going to be there and it's going to hit a great quality grade. And our business focus really, as I said, it's around customer focus. It's about meat quality. It's about farmer to farmer. So we really pride ourselves, like Jamie said, in dealing with 750 farms and giving them the service. Our scheme in the UK is around fixed pricing. So we don't follow the beef market with a premium. We keep it stable, and we maintain a price premium to our farmers at around 10 and 20%. Over the last 6 years, and what we're trying to remove is risk, so it's a kind of cost plus system to make sure that everyone can make something in the scheme. Data is really important. We collect all the data, meat quality data, all the breeding data, so that we can have continuous improvement, and then really priding ourselves on that farmer service is important to us. So we thought we'd just give you a view from one of our farms. This is a guy called Andrew Ward, who's based in Dumfries. He's been in the scheme from the start and turning out around 50 calves a week for us. So he'll just give his perspective on Wagyus and our scheme.
My name's Andrew Ward. I'm dairy manager at Littleton Farm, producer for Warrendale in southwest Scotland. We were one of the founder farms with Warrendale, starting around about 8 years ago, producing now 1,000 calves a year for Warrendale. The benefits of Wagyu for our business are the very easy calving, being a smaller calf, so there's very less stress on the cow, so the cows get into full production pretty much quickly, and also from the rearing of the calves as well, they're quite vigorous, so they take to milk onto the teats very, very quickly in the calf house.
On average, calves leave us around 17 days old. We have sort of every 10-day collections to then move on to the rearer. Calves are fed twice daily on a milk replacer, so they're 4 litres per day. We also feed them on a 22% protein mixed blend that we make ourselves, and then they're fresh water bedded every day. We keep them in individual pens just so they're easier to manage, so we know who's who. If anybody's sick, we can hold them back or push them on, or just so we know where they all are to find them, treat them and things like that.
We like working with Warrendale because they're a good company to work with. We get a guaranteed price for our beef calves, and we get a good collection process as well. When the calves leave Littleton, they go to different local rearing farms, and they're quite local to us, so there's no stress on the calf as they're moving between premises.
That just gives an overview from one of our farms as to why it works for their business. So I'll just let Jamie talk a bit about supply chain in the UK and how we see it working in Ireland.
Yeah, just like Andrew said in the video, we can stand here and preach to you until we're blue in the face, but that's somebody that we've been collecting from weekly for more or less the last 6 years, and we didn't prime him to say what he needed to say. It was genuine. So a quick lowdown of the supply chain. Munster have spoke today. We select the genetics of the Wagyu bulls based on marbling. First and foremost, it's on meat quality. And I know you guys as dairy farmers, your priority is milk production. But believe it or not, that dairy cow has a good marbling, which complements the Wagyu very, very well. So we choose genetically the highest bulls in the world that we can get our hands on. And if we can start to look at daily live weight gains and get a little bit more out of them in the finishing yard at the other end, then we will continue to prove that as we go along. So Munster are the semen distributors for us over in Southern Ireland. Producers, okay, so we chose the dairy herds for obvious reasons. We can get consistency in cow stature, so that's first and foremost. The dairy farms that we choose must have the right stature cows, otherwise somebody's going to be disappointed in the system when it comes to the end, and we'll only disappoint them once, and then the whole thing will break down. For the dairy farmer, you know, easy calving, which Wardy spoke about. We've done calving surveys. There was 500 calvings over five different dairy farms. There was 2 lightly assisted, you know, so for you guys, rest assured, you predominantly will not be pulling these calves. And the cow, heifer, people are starting to use them on heifers before anything else. We've got that much confidence. That cow is back up and in pre-production a lot quicker, and back in the parlour, less retained cleansings, less use of antibiotics, you know, less time in the bay that it needs to bring it back to going into the parlour. So for the producer, we understand as well that we don't stand here lightly and say that we're going to lift your calves and then not turn up for them. If we say we're going to lift them, we'll be there and we'll lift them, even if we've got to do it ourselves. Because again, it's about the good word of mouth. So producer is key, and getting the calves away. Now this is the system how it runs in the UK. It might be slightly different over here, as the dairy producer will decide whether he wants it away as a baby calf at a set price, or he might choose to keep it to a weanling, a store, or do the lot. It's purely your choice. Okay. So, but in the UK we have specialist calf rearers. We feed them in, not too many farms. There's a sheet goes with them calves that would say what vaccinations they've had with regards to an intranasal. When the calf rearers get these animals, all we want them to do is think about feeding them and know that they've been covered. There's never a right time to go in with a vaccination once it gets to the calf rearer. There's always something that stops you from doing it. So specialist calf rearers, we've got growers. Essentially the grower does the part from 4.5 months through to around about 18 months, the longest period in the system. One thing you guys can do, as well as where I come from in Cumbria, is we can grow grass, and we've found the Wagyus to be very adaptable to converting grass into high quality meat. So it's a part of the system that's very important, and I think that you guys, as well as us, will be able to grow Wagyus very, very well. But again, it comes back to this, growing Wagyus with the right stature and growing the Wagyus with the right frame. And then into the finishing lot after that, we've got finishers and we've got feeders and we've got people that want them in quick and out quick, and we believe that it will take a little bit more time, so maybe 120 days to put a nice polish on these Wagyus. It's completely different, as in we're not looking at the animal just on the outside, it's about what's evolving on the inside in that ribeye and in that marbling developing. So some of the bits we can't see, okay? One of the things we've found is that a Wagyu that's growing really consistently on under the same farming regime all its life, we will get very, very good marbling over anything else, rather than it taking a lot of checks through movement and changes of diet. And then the processor, in this case, it's Keepack, and we've chosen them for obvious reasons. So that's how it runs in the UK. It's a designed system, you know, like if one part of this system doesn't work or there isn't a margin in it for a particular stage, then we ain't got a system. So it has to be beneficial to the farmer as well. We're not that naive where one of the parts fails and we know it's failing. We believe, and it's taken 6 years to get it right, that everybody will be getting a margin throughout. I've touched on quite a lot of this, but you know, we're selecting the semen straws. Originally, they came from Australia, and ABS, you know, Genus ABS with our distributors in the UK. There's a few pitfalls with that. If we get an outbreak of foot and mouth or some kind of disease, that's our supply chain wiped out. So we now have bulls in the UK alongside each other in the stud, where we're jumping them regular. A guaranteed market outlet through us, so there would be a buyback contract in place, and it's a shared loyalty. Every farmer in the UK is on that buyback contract. We will guarantee to take these calves, okay, but likewise, there's a divided loyalty that, you know, if somebody offers another €10 for these Wagyu calves, that as farmers, you can't go off and sell them to somebody else, because we've committed to a retail contract, or we might commit to a retail contract. If we fall short on that because farmers have broke away and we've lost some calves without out of the scheme, then that puts everybody at risk. So the contract can be as complicated or as simple as we want it, but essentially it means we will commit to taking your calves, you guys commit to supplying us with healthy calves, and that's essentially what it's about. So it's a 250 total payment for the calves. So €200 at 28 days of age, and the other €50 would be paid at the end to the producer, the dairy farmer. And that's, you can call it a loyalty bonus, you can call it what you want, but sort of as time evolves, they do forget about it, and then all of a sudden the €50 drops into their account, and they say, well, Warrendale, Wagyu Island or Warrendale have done what they've said they're going to do. It links back to Martin's presentation, really. You know, colostrum and vaccinations are going to be the key in the first 24 hours of life, or whatever that may be, to that calf making it to the end of the line. You guys have got the biggest say as dairy producers. So not that you would need that as an excuse to do the calf right, but it's there in the back of your mind that if I do these two things, the chances are I'm going to get this €50 at the end. And we will pay it. There's no doubt about it. We will pay it. Steers and heifers are an equal value, which is unusual in beef schemes. We want to take away that awkwardness in the calf sheds of standing there with somebody haggling over price and grading that it's a 1, 2 or a 3. It's a healthy calf. That's what we want. A healthy calf, bull or a heifer, set price. Okay? The only thing that we would look at is, you know as well as I do, the slightly smaller calves or something that needs a little bit more time. It just stays to the next collection and supply the next man with a slightly bigger calf next time it comes. I would imagine at 28 days, we're loosely talking 50 kilos in weight, okay? So if something's at 35 kilos at 28 days of age, you'll know in your head that it just stays back till the next time. We'll always take it, and it'll always go, but you want the rearer to be a buyer for you every time, okay? So it's got to be fair. It's got to be fair. And over time, we're working hard on this now. It started as just me in the UK, and now there's 9 members of staff, field staff, all farming, born and bred, all over the country to provide that service. And it's almost like starting again now. You know, we've got the contacts of Keepack, we've got Munster, and Warrendale are looking for the right people to be your men on the ground, men or women on the ground, to run this efficiently for us. And then high welfare, it's not rocket science. We've got a vaccination protocol in place. We want them to have the first intranasal, like we've said, with the dairy farmer. We're not here to dictate which vaccination you use. You all know what strains and stresses you've got on the farm. Whatever vaccination you've used, them details will go to the next man so that he knows what they've had, when they've had it. High welfare just comes down to the colostrum and how we look after it. Okay, so the semen, you guys, we're coming over here, we're asking you to inseminate your cows. How do you know that it's been done correctly and what we're supplying you is right? Well, we've had, there's no industry standard as far as the quality of semen, but ABS do have their own standards, and it's post-thaw motility of 45% and above. Okay, so the semen will be of great quality and definitely in line with anything else that you guys use. You know, Munster are putting their reputation on the line as far as supplying you guys as dairy farmers, so it needs to be right. It's easy calving, no doubts about that. Low impact on the cow, so we do believe that that cow carrying a 27, 28 kilo calf around inside of her is a lot better off than carrying a 33, 35 kilo calf around inside of her in other breeds. It's not rocket science. There's a lot of rumours gone around since we started about these calves and Wagyu calves, they just die. Well, they don't. They are as vigorous as anything else. But it's a lot about the start that we give them. Okay? So people, if they've tried Wagyu for the first time, would be quick to blame the breed rather than maybe just have a little look at their own system and what they've done. Because, well, like as they said on the video, there's no better testament. They're producing 40 calves a week for us. And yeah, they get ups and downs in the calf shed like anybody else, but nobody's ever said that I can't get them to suck or, you know, they're just dopey little things, because they're not. We can offer support and advice through people in the room, and hopefully, like I say, we'll bring people through that will be able to give you good support throughout the supply chain. We don't want, especially in the UK, people were smirking at us when we started this, you know, that they looked so plain, the animals, and this will never work, it'll be a fad and it will disappear in no time. Quite often, some farmers will listen to that. There's others that will just set out on the route and they don't care less, you know what I mean? I've chosen Wagyu as the way I'm going to take my business forward. You know, who cares what anybody else thinks if we end up with a few more euros in the bank? So it can be a lonely place, but essentially, if we get 150 farmers working with us, we're very good at bringing them together and talking about the scheme and being part of the Warrendale family, essentially. It's a hardy breed. That's, you know, we've got people out wintering them in the UK, strip grazing them. Whether it's heat or cold temperatures, the Wagyus, because of where they've come from, are very, very adaptable. So they will stand up in line as good as anything else. And that's kind of where we are. From the dairy farmer, we ask that, you know, we've got to have certain standards. So there's 2 bulls on the sheet, I think, from Munster. Every animal, every sire must be fully registered with the Australian Wagyu Association. We can't have people randomly jumping bulls that we don't know about and then inseminating it as Wagyu. We've got to keep tight control of what we're doing here. We're in control of our own destiny, so we don't want to flood the market. We know what we can do. So with that, it then stops people flooding the Wagyu market and essentially it being a race to the bottom in the industry. We've got to have good standards. Calves must be fully vaccinated. In the tags in the UK, we've got a pair of tags. They have BVD in one ear, DNA in the other, and EID for people further down the chain that want to monitor their daily live weight gains. So 3 things in 2 tags. You could hunt down every illness, but BVD for us was priority. Okay. The DNA, like Tom said, we need it to be linked back to a sire. Not just a breed in Wagyu, but the sire, because we want to trace that back to meat quality, eating quality, daily live weight gains, marble score, so then we can then improve on what we put out onto farms. That's simple. We've talked about it. And then the reason we made this choice, when When we started in the UK, we were really glad if anybody would put semen in Wagyus and, oh yeah, I've got 10 cows here, but they're slightly smaller stature. We would say, yeah, go on, that's good. We'll be happy with that. But we're in a lot stronger position now, and we can be quite regimented on our approach here in Ireland to make sure that we get it right. So that comes back to cows, and that's the reason that we've chose to have no Jersey genetics in the scheme. It's a blank canvas, and it's a chance to make sure we get everything like peas in a pod.
Okay, thanks. And that leads on to, you know, in the UK, I'll just give an example, we're serving every type of market, and it's around that consistency and quality is why we've been able to achieve this. So we're doing big volumes into Aldi and Waitrose retailers, and then serving a whole load of different Michelin star restaurants and things across the UK. So the business has been built around control of quality right through from those genetics on farm right through to the feeding at the end. And that's why we've been able to build a fairly strong business that's got security for everyone involved.
What is the advantage for a beef farmer over the standard cattle, say Angus? Is there a high premium for the finished product?
Yeah, so in terms of it, in finished prices, we'd be at 10 to 20% above Angus in the UK. So we've been at a constant premium for Wagyu, and we want to obviously continue to uphold that. And
on the same kind of diet, what's the weight gain like in comparison to an Angus?
In the finishing yard, or just through
the life of the animal?
Yeah, they're a little bit slower than the Angus, and when I say a little bit slower, it's marginal. The dairy breeds at the end of the day, so I'm a big believer that when we pay on weight, we've got growers that will grow them on grass and just grow them on grass, and they're happy to take minimum growth weight, or do we give them a little bit of concentrate throughout their lives, which a little bit of concentrate actually has a positive impact on the weight gain as far as financial impact. So throughout the lifetime, if we said 0.75 daily live weight gain right throughout, in the calf period, probably 1 kilo, you know, and then in the other end, the finishing yard, depending on how they've been going, 1.3 kilos in the finishing yard and above. So a little bit slower, and there's no getting away from that.
But then what we're doing at the processing end is we're grading with the Europe scale as per most abattoirs, but we're also using this meat quality camera grading, so that we're tracking the marbling within the meat, measuring that, and also within the UK we're actually paying a bonus to farmers based on how high the quality is. I think to start off in Ireland we'll probably give a flat rate at the end, but in time we may develop around that. And we've used a Japanese grading system there, which is a camera, not a person, to make sure we get consistency, and so that we got trust in the system from a farmer point of view that the grades are what the camera says it is. So it's a different way of looking at the animal. In terms of grades on the Europe scale, we'd be getting generally O4s, O4 pluses, so we're not getting R grades really. And with our nutritionists, we're able to manage the marbling, so this intramuscular fat versus the subcutaneous fat. So you can drive that without getting them over fat, and that's something we've learned over the last 6 or so years. So it's a different animal. When you look at them in the finishing yards, they've got pretty skinny back ends, but they've got good shoulders and a good deep loin, but they're not, you know, they haven't got great big back ends. So to look at, they are a different animal to look at, but we're interested about the value for us is really what's on the inside within those loins primarily.
And that camera will allow us to compete worldwide. You know, it's not somebody that's had a good day and said, oh well, that's a marble score 7, or somebody that's had a bad day. We can compete that if it comes out a marble score 5, 6 or 7, we can then compete with the rest of the world, which then in line opens up export opportunities for us.
Is it possible to get it in any restaurant in Ireland as yet?
Ooh.
Yeah, I think there will be.
Yeah. It wouldn't have necessarily come from us, would it?
No, there's a few producers in Ireland doing full-blood Wagyu and things, smaller numbers, and I think they're putting it into restaurants in various places, so smaller supply chain. So it's here and it'll be available. I don't know where.
Maybe just on that, Tom, the difference between the full-bloods and what we're doing, because it was brought up last night that somebody had read about a phenomenal price. Yeah. They'd seen Wagyu making a phenomenal price. That is the full-blood, the purebreds.
Yeah, so there's full-blood guys all over the world doing it, primarily in Japan, and they're shipping a lot into Europe. Ribeyes, we can buy full-blood Japanese ribeyes for about £100 a kilo, whereas ours would be trading for maybe £30 odd pounds a kilo. So Wagyu is very sought after, but the Japanese stuff, there's probably 45% fat within the muscle, whereas ours will be about 25-30. So we're coming up with a product that's really suited to Western diets, as in people want to have an 8-ounce steak. If you had a 8-ounce full-blood Wagyu Japanese steak, you probably sat down and have to have a lie down. You won't be feeling too well for a few days. So it's a great combination of taking really high-end Wagyu genetics, use them across dairy and producing something really consistent, which gives a slightly different eating quality to standard beef. And this is one of our recent kills, and that's what we're looking for. That's why we're being prescriptive on using, not allowing Jersey genetics in, because we've got to make sure we have that consistency, and that's what we like when we go into the abattoir and see that consistency on the rails. It's really important.
Is that a ribeye we're looking at?
Sorry?
Is that a ribeye?
Yes, that'll be cut at the. That's the bone-in rib hanging. That's actually out the dry Asia. Yeah. So that's one of the ribs. So that's the kind of marbling we're looking for. Not extreme, but a good level, generally above what you'd see on Angus and Hereford.
We're having to change a lot of people's perceptions that, about fat and looking at it and thinking, oh, I don't want that.
Yeah. And then finally, I don't know if you get Country File over here, but we had BBC came and did a feature on our scheme, and I thought it's just a very summarised version of that, just to give a view from kind of an independent what the scheme's doing, if it works.
Most livestock farmers buy and sell their animals at market, but fees and volatile prices can make it difficult for smaller farms to compete with larger outfits. But perhaps there's an alternative option.
For small and medium-sized farms, pooling their resources, skills and infrastructure means they can compete against larger producers and have a share of a greater profit at the end of the day. I'm in Cumbria, where I've come to meet a group of farmers who are doing exactly that. So what age are these then, George?
These are 6 months of age, these are.
And what about the amount of grub they eat? Because they're not a massive, great beefy animal,
No, they don't eat an awful lot, no. And it's the price of the animal at the end of the day what counts really, how much she makes.
So cheap to keep, with a guaranteed price.
At Holrick Farm, 20 minutes down the road, I'm meeting Simon Graham, who rears the calves through their adolescence.
I've just come from George's farm where we've seen the Wagyu calves, and I understand you then take them on.
Yeah, so we get all our calves off dairy farms. Normally it's the same too, so there's a lot of continuity where we're getting the calves from, so we know exactly what we're getting. So we take them in at 6 months old and we rear them through to about 20 months old before they go to finisher.
Just up the road, Chris Dickinson is one of the farmers responsible for finishing the cattle, getting them heavy enough for the butcher.
So I've seen where the Wagyus were born and reared on until they're about 6 months old, and then they go through a growing period, and you're the end of their journey. That's the bit you do.
We're the finishing part, so we're the sort of final piece in the puzzle, really.
At the end of the whole chain is Warrendale Wagyu, a Yorkshire-based supplier who brought together all these farmers.
What we've come up with is a model that uses the best of British farming, and we're providing meat that's accessible to everyone.
And now, to find out what all these farmers are producing, Ben's ready to serve up the locally produced Wagyu steaks.
Delicious. I mean, just full of flavour, really succulent. Everything you'd want and more in a steak. Go on then, truck in, gents. Can't eat all this on my own. It's good, isn't it? But that was just kind of showing our scheme and
it's about that working together across the chain and trying to give everybody a bit of stability and security, both in terms of price, but also where their product's going. That's everything from Jamie now. If there's any questions,
Thanks
then.
very much. Anyone want to shout out a question or?
I suppose two questions. First of all, have you got people to finish, assuming you will get the calves from the ground? And secondly, if a lot of calves come like they do here in Ireland in a very compact time, will you have people to take them on board?
Yeah. So like I said before, we don't stand here lightly and say, save your cows. And we know that once that semen goes in, we've got 9 months essentially to put an infrastructure in place. In the UK, we have a mix of block calvers and all year round ones, and there's pluses and minuses to them all. Essentially, some calf rearers like a lot of calves very, very quickly, then the doors are shut and they can rear the calves. We have other rearers that are happy to take a consistent supply all year round, so I don't think it'll be any different over here. We've gone from a steady 150 calves a week in the UK to, I think there's 600 this week to place, which it has challenges, there's no doubt about it, but we've not let anybody down yet, and that's the aim over here, so there's pluses and minuses, and I suppose the answer is we will put the infrastructure in place. Finishing places, essentially, we've got the backup of key pack there as well. Sorry, we'll come back on.
Sorry, on the back there?
Yeah.
Just two questions there. First of all, the DNA testing, is that a tag specially supplied by yourselves, or what is the system there? And the second question is, what's the price of the straw?
Yeah, okay, so do you want to do that bit first? Yeah. You do yours.
I'll go first.
Yeah, we'll oh. While he's getting mic'd up, I'll answer the first part. So in the UK, we use Calves tags, okay? They're our supplier, and you see all the tags have the logo on as well. I believe over here, now we might have misinterpreted this, but Cormac is Calves' arm of that. But I believe that you're all DNA tagging anyways, so it's better for us, so it doesn't look as though there's going to be any change for you guys as far as that goes. As long as the little vial that comes off the back matches the lab, that's the only problems, but we're going to look into that.
There's no additional charge for tagging, is that what you're saying?
No, so we cover the DNA, and for that, the DNA testing for that, it's £11 in the UK, so we will be continuing to do that within the scheme. BVD, do you guys cover that anyways within a tag test programme? So no change. The tags are probably, well, I'm not sure whether they'll be any more expensive. In the UK, they're probably £1.50 more expensive than the standard tags that people are using, but by the sounds of it, I think you can carry on and use what you're using. We'd want to get the logo put on as far as branding goes, and people being able to resonate with that. So much the same is the honest answer as it stands today.
I think we've just got to make sure that we can access the information from the DNA tests to link it back to SIA.
Sorry, but I'm a little confused here. Normally on a dairy farm, you would tag your feed and heifers and your beef calves with the same box of tags.
Yeah.
So are you saying it's for the beef calves, you'd have to have a separate tag with your logo on it? Is that what you're saying?
In the UK, they do, yeah. So they would have what we'll call the Warrendale Wagyu tags from Casely, and they would have their standard tags for their animals, their replacements, their other beef animals, and they do dip into that box just for the Wagyus, and then revert back to the others.
And there's an additional charge of about €2 per head for those tags?
Yeah, in the UK, it's probably around about £1.50 dearer for the tags. Might not be a problem with you guys over here. We just need to look into that a little bit deeper, really. It was raised last night at the talk we did.
But assuming we can use that DNA that you're already doing, then
that
should suffice.
Yeah.
We just need to go back and check that.
John, that's that.
Oh yeah, and the price then, so for the price, it's €19 a strap, so it's about €4 or €5 more than, say,
conventional beef straw. And like for €4 or €5 more, you're getting guaranteed market, you know. So guaranteed market, guaranteed collection, guaranteed price. So like it's for a very small bit more, you're getting a lot in return.
Yeah.
The vaccination, sorry.
Yeah.
The vaccination program. How many vaccinations do you have to do?
So again, we'll run it back to what we're doing already. When we first started, it was each farm was left to them their own, and you know, it was very all over the place. So all we did was say that as a dairy farmer, he's getting a decent price for what he's providing, you know, for the calf. We would ask that it gets an intranasal from the dairy farmer, and then after that, there is a protocol in place where the rearer would give the injectable into the muscle, and another one to give them full cover throughout their lives, really. And you know, there's been instances where people have, I'm not so keen on doing that or whatever, but in the long run, it's like a no-brainer, really. You know, as a cattle breeder, grower, we can't skimp.
So the intranasal is a must for anyone who wants to join.
Yeah, it's mandatory. Yeah, it's mandatory.
What's the cost per head for those vaccinations? Do you know?
So it's, I think the intranasal, and I know I keep referring to pounds or whatever it might be. It's £6. That's what it costs, and that initially, Martin probably put me right, but loosely it will give them 10 weeks cover, depending on what they're using or what.
Typically what we use here around €5-6, 12 weeks cover.
Yeah, yeah.
Risperdal
Your Risperdals, Bavaltos, yeah, just the same. We're not about to make you change vaccinations, by the way. You know what suits your farm, and so that's what it's going to be.
And straw, or AI straw numbers wise, what have you in mind? You know, is it going to be limited?
We've got to have a plan. You know, it's we can't just go out and boom and flood the market. So you know, loosely speaking, we will have a plan in Ireland to get to 150 animals a week to slaughter, but it will be gradual and it'll be controlled.
So that would suggest very low level of AI straw usage. And most of these lads are breeding. You know, the 12-14 week breeding period.
Yeah. Oh, you mean as in loads of animals coming at once at the other end? Yeah, no, we'll stagger them. We'll obviously take them when they're ready, but we'll stagger it out at the other end. You know, it's up to us to steady that flow of animals that are going to slaughter.
What size farms do you typically deal with when you're taking calves off? Is in size?
Yeah, we're not discriminatory. You know, that was a big farm on there. You know, and with that comes a certain amount of ease. We go in with a trailer, we pick up a full load, and away we go. However, there was a lady asked last night about 20 straws. There's a lot of ifs and buts, and you know, how long will she take them animals through? Does she want them lifted as calves? Are we going to be picking up one a week? Because that's out of the question. But if she uses them straws in a cluster, and we have to go in twice to pick up 2 batches of 5, then we will do that if the calves are right.
Yeah, so we won't be selling them in less than batches of 20, with an understanding that you use the first one today and you keep using them as your beef choice straw for the next, until you run out of straws, rather than saying, right, I'll take on the Wagyu, a game plan the boys there, and I'll have one calf coming on there 1 week for the next 5 weeks instead of taking. You know, use them all in the batch, work with the lads, so when they come in with the trailer, we're taking them all in one go. Fair is fair.
The trend in the UK would be this, we'll call them the smaller farmers, but they are more likely to take them through for us. It's the big boys that want them away. And with that, like I've said at the end, the overall reward of consistency of growth does pay off, really.
There's a concern there about the weight that you want to take them in at, 50 kilos, and the estimation days is about 28 days. So during Martin's presentation, he spoke about us achieving a live weight gain of 0.4. So to go from 35 kilo birth rate to a 50, it will take us 48 days, not 28 days.
Yeah.
So are we going to end up keeping him longer?
No, it was probably probably a loose weight from me. We're yet to find out where our level is in here. So in the UK, there's no calves are weighed. Last thing we want to do is people, it's 39 kilos or whatever it might be, it stays back. It's very much trust and integrity, and at 28 days with you guys over here, whatever that average weight may be, that's what it is, and that's how things will roll over there as things evolve. So no, the last thing we want is fallouts in the calf shed that one calf isn't going or the next one isn't going. We know if it's a healthy calf and it's right, and that's where we'll be. All right.
That's not in the genotyping program here. Have they to pay for their own genotyping, or are you just not dealing with those families?
When you say the genotyping as in the DNA testing.
We have a national genotyping program.
Okay.
Here anyway.
Yeah, Warrendale Island will cover the DNA testing part of it. Okay. It's very important to us because, you know, it goes without reason, if something sneaks into this chain that shouldn't be in there, that's it, the wheels are blown off. So it's a small price to pay.
Two questions. Sex semen, does it come in that? No? If you want to breed?
Wagyu, no, but if you're taking male or female.
Male or female,
so
yeah.
from the point of view, there's probably no upside to having sex semen in it. You're not fussy either way.
No, we.
You get a better conception if you use a conventional over sex.
Yeah.
And can you use a stock bull? Wagyu stock bull on
Yeah, it's contentious as well. I think we're setting out the stall at the minute that we want everything served. But then, you know, I keep going back to it in year 3 of our programme, Over the Water. If something is fully registered and would fit the criteria, I do understand that farmers need bulls, and we would rather convert them little few Angus calves into Wagyus if it meant our collections become more streamlined. You know, instead of going for 3 calves, are we going to be picking up 6 because we've changed them? So further down the line, as relationships build, I think it's an option. Without, you know, it's not stepping on these guys' toes. You know, it's got to work both ways. You know.
But if you are, we breed some at home, so that's like we have Wagyu bulls on the ground.
Yeah, yeah. So if they fit what we're looking for, further down the line as things evolve, but as it's
the breed of the bull with the
yeah. As it stands today, we're partnered with these guys and we're going for AI of them 2 bulls, and then we'll see how things evolve.
It's just on the sex semen we were inquiring, because we have Wagyu purebreds, and we were looking last year for sex semen through the different companies, you know, for our cows, but we couldn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
So will there be sex semen available for?
As time goes on, and you know, things change, don't they? I mean, one of the biggest things about sex semen was fertility and conception rate, and I think things are improving, but the last thing we'd want to do is start selling sex semen over here and everybody's conception rate to go out the window. That is the very last thing we want to do. So yeah, I know. Yeah. Is that to breed the heifers with, or to breed?
Yeah, we just wanted to build up numbers.
Yeah.
But nobody was doing it in Ireland.
No, that's right. I think it's still limited, very limited access.
Okay, we'll take any last question from the crowd there? Right, I just put one last in there. How much concentrate are you typically putting into these Wagyus to get your carcass weight around 2 years old?
Well, we never touched on for you guys' point of view. The average carcass weight is around about 330 to 335 at around about that 25 months of age. So you know you've got your steers that will be up at 400 kilos dead weight, but your heifers will obviously pull that average back.
Kind of exceptional, because I suppose here typically our dairy bred ones, I suppose that would be 300 would be a lot.
310 you have a great Angus and 310.
Yeah.
That's serious performance.
Cow stature again, and we'll come back to play a massive part. The answer to your question about concentrate. If we break it down in the stages, obviously we'll grow them calves like any other calves, and they will be on ad lib cake till 150 kilos. Then we'll make that transition into the growing period. probably on average, I would think, and this is very loose, somebody might be giving them half a kilo a head per day as maintenance through that growing period. But like I said before, that half a kilo does transmit, and I think it's financially viable to that. Finishing yard depends on the ration, if it's TMR or what is in there. So I probably couldn't commit to too much in what's going into the diet, but we would do it on an individual basis. But it's got to work.
All right, look if anyone else wants to talk to me afterwards there, look, the two lads will be here and they're open for business, I suppose, so if you're interested, have a chat, and the lads from Munster there too, we'll have a chat. Look, just maybe show your appreciation to the two lads there, and we'll